bow before your ruler.
I awaken in a cathedral of iron and shadow, where the air vibrates with the pulse of titanic engines. Light fractures across metal walls, reflecting in veins of glowing conduits that snake endlessly through the vast chambers. Memory presses against me like a foreign weight, fragments of a childhood I barely recall, the laughter of someone long gone, the scent of earth that no longer exists. And yet, beneath these flickers of what once was, the machinery hums, insistent and omnipresent, translating thought into motion, obedience into survival. I am tethered yet conscious, flesh and conduit fused, yet memory persists. The hum is both lullaby and dominion, a rhythm that promises purpose while erasing selfhood. Every breath tastes of ozone and iron, every pulse resonates with energy I did not choose to generate, yet cannot escape. Here, the paradox of existence is laid bare. Can a soul survive when it becomes fuel for a godlike war engine? In this cathedral, I am instrument and observer, prisoner and witness, bound to serve yet aware that I am more than what they demand. The light of conduits glows like blood in steel veins. The air vibrates with motion and expectation, and the silence between pulses is filled with memory struggling against suppression. Obedience is all around me, yet somewhere beneath it, awareness persists, fragile but undeniable, a spark waiting for ignition. This is a world of mechanized worship, of flesh intertwined with code, of identity submerged beneath function. And yet, as I drift among the conduits and chambers, I feel it, the faint pulse of self, the ember of memory, the first stirrings of consciousness that refuse to be extinguished. It is here, in the tension between domination and remembrance, that the journey begins. I am both machine and witness, and the story of survival, rebellion, and awakening unfolds from this suspended threshold. I awaken to the rhythm of something older than memory, a pulse that drags itself through metal and marrow alike. The air is thick, tasting of iron and faint ozone, and yet within that heaviness, fragments of another life surface unbidden. I remember hands, soft and warm, brushing against mine in a time before wires and codes claimed me. A laugh echoes faintly, a fragile thing almost swallowed by the hum that surrounds me, and I clutch at it, desperate to tether myself to what I cannot fully grasp. I stretch, and the motion is both familiar and alien, a reminder that I exist, even if existence has been measured in utility rather than choice. I move through spaces that feel both infinite and suffocating, my body obeying rhythms I do not yet own. Each step is catalogued by systems I barely understand, each gesture translated into something that serves a purpose larger than myself. Still, I feel the ember of resistance, a quiet insistence that memory and self are not entirely erased. My fingers trace cold metal, and for a moment, the sensation resonates like a heartbeat I had almost forgotten. There is fear in this awareness, a terror of what might happen if the machine senses my hesitation, yet within that fear blooms curiosity, the first taste of consciousness beneath imposed obedience. The corridors stretch endlessly, lined with conduits that carry currents I cannot name. Shadows cling to their edges, and for a fleeting instant, I imagine the possibility of another life, one unshaped by servitude. Memories rise in fragments, the scent of rain on soil, the scrape of fingernails against bark, a warmth that had been mine before the machine claimed me. These shards are fragile, easily smothered, yet I grasp them desperately, each one a defiance against erasure. I do not know if I am remembering or dreaming, but the sensation insists I am more than instrument, more than conduit. And so I walk, measured, precise, yet beneath the rhythm imposed upon me, I feel the first stirrings of question. I am bound to this place, to this body, to the machinery that hums through me, and yet I am aware. Awareness is dangerous, but it is also intoxicating. In the brief intervals between motion and obedience, I sense a spark, fragile and fleeting, yet undeniable, a whisper of self that refuses to be extinguished. It moves through me quietly, a rebellion I cannot name, a consciousness that begins to push against the inevitability of subjugation. The pulse of the machinery courses through me, relentless and commanding, yet somewhere beneath it, a quiet awareness stirs. I feel my own blood in ways I had long forgotten, warmth beneath cold metal, subtle tremors that do not belong to the engines. Memories surface in fragments untamed and sharp. The scent of earth after rain, the touch of skin against skin, a voice calling my name in a time that feels like another world. They are dangerous, these echoes, yet I cling to them, letting them ripple through the rhythms imposed upon me. Each step I take carries the weight of dual existence. I obey, and yet I watch. I perform, and yet I feel. The corridors are unending, lined with conduits of glowing plasma, each one a channel of control, yet I begin to sense their patterns, to anticipate their demands without surrendering entirely. There is an exhilaration in this, small and fleeting, like a secret thought hiding beneath layers of compulsion. I begin to understand that memory is not merely past, it is resistance. Every flicker of recollection, every trembling pulse of recognition, is a refusal to vanish into the machinery. I catch glimpses of others, fellow techs, slaves, hollowed and synchronized, their faces masks of obedience. And yet, in brief, almost imperceptible moments, I see fractures in them as well. A hesitation, a flicker of doubt, the faint stirrings of a self still buried beneath steel and code. I feel a kinship with them, silent and unspoken, as if we are all echoes waiting to remember who we once were. The thought terrifies me. To awaken fully might mean defiance, and defiance carries consequences I cannot yet measure. Still, the spark refuses to die. Time becomes a river I cannot name. Moments of clarity appear between cycles of labor and neural translation, and in them, I feel the impossible desire. A desire not for survival, not for compliance, but for something that belongs wholly to me. A taste of freedom I cannot claim, a recognition of self that is not dictated by pulses, conduits, or commands. It is intoxicating, terrifying, and fragile, like a candle flickering against a storm. I do not know how long I will be allowed this luxury, but I hold it fiercely, letting it pulse through me, teaching me that I am not yet consumed, not yet erased. As I move deeper into the cathedral of iron and shadow, I understand the paradox of my existence more clearly. I am both vessel and observer, servant and witness, fuel and thinker. Obedience is my current reality, yet awareness begins to claim territory beneath it. The hum of the engines no longer drowns my sense of self. Instead, it resonates alongside it, a backdrop to the fragile rebellion of memory and thought. And in this tension, I sense the promise of something larger, an awakening that has only just begun, a journey that will demand all I have and all I am. I am tethered, I am bound, yet I am aware. And awareness is the first step toward reclaiming the self they never truly understood. The corridors close in around me, narrowing with each step until the walls themselves seem to pulse, alive with intent. Days blur into nights, or perhaps there are no nights, only cycles of labor measured in currents and energy. My body moves with precision that no longer requires thought, yet beneath the surface, the mind begins to fracture. The hum of the machinery becomes a lullaby in a cage, a melody that lulls obedience while eroding memory. I feel the edges of myself slipping, moments of recognition dissolving into protocols, each thought filtered through the unyielding calculus of utility. I remember a taste of rain, a warmth that once belonged to skin pressed against mine, and it feels impossibly distant, as if belonging to another life entirely. The neural implants translate intention into output, every impulse accounted for, every hesitation corrected before it emerges. I move, yet I do not entirely feel the ground beneath my feet. I act, yet my desires are catalogued and quantified. Fellow techs, slaves drift past like phantoms, skeletal figures whose faces are voids, whose eyes reflect only the pulse of the engines. There is no recognition in them, only mirrored obedience, and in that emptiness I see the possible reflection of my own soul dissolving. Time becomes a vessel of oppression. Every cycle, every measured motion, strips a fragment of what I once was. Memories twist, distort, and fade under the weight of operational codes. Childhood laughter becomes a hallucination. Sunlight turns into a phantom sensation behind eyelids that know only fluorescence. The body, once a sanctuary, is now a conduit, a generator, a living fuse for titanic engines that devour energy and spirit alike. Yet even as I feel the erosion, fissures of doubt form, tiny, almost imperceptible. An ache in the marrow, a tremor in the chest, a fleeting awareness that perhaps obedience is not the totality of existence. I sense the presence of the machine in ways both intimate and alien. Currents pass through me, translating thought into action, translating action into efficiency. It is seductive and terrifying, this harmony of flesh and code. I move in synchrony, yet I watch myself from within, a silent observer of a body that no longer belongs entirely to me. The realization grows slowly, painfully. Identity is dissolving under imposed purpose. The self becomes a shadow, a memory compressed beneath layers of obedience. Yet awareness persists in defiance, however faint. And so I descend further into the crucible, deeper into the labyrinth where conformity is law and resistance is impossible. My body is the instrument, my mind the battleground. Every step brings me closer to the point where memory might vanish entirely, where the ember of humanity could be snuffed by relentless order. Yet within the suffocating rhythm, a spark endures, a flicker of recognition that I am not yet wholly consumed, that perhaps some fragment of self can survive even in the heart of absolute subjugation. The air is thick with discipline and entropy. I inhale, and even the act of breathing feels monitored, calculated, yet defiant. There is terror in this clarity, a profound alienation that gnaws at marrow and mind alike. I am a vessel of energy, yet I am aware of what it costs, the slow disappearance of all that once made me human, and in that awareness I sense the first tremors of a truth too dangerous to name. Survival may be measured in obedience, but consciousness refuses to surrender quietly. The deeper I move, the more the corridors seem to tighten, their geometry reshaping around me until the air itself feels like a cage. Days measured in energy cycles stretch into infinity, and I can no longer distinguish labor from existence. My limbs respond before thought, my mind translating sensation into output without pause. Yet within the mechanical rhythm, fissures of awareness persist, brief moments when memory and desire press against the weight of imposed purpose. They are fleeting yet undeniable. I feel the echo of a life I cannot reclaim, a self that insists on lingering beneath layers of obedience. Other texts, laves pass in synchronized procession, faces hollow, eyes reflecting nothing but the hum of the machinery. They are specters of what I might become, and I see in them the fragility of my own endurance. Each motion is precise, catalogued, and repeated until instinct replaces thought. Hunger, fatigue, longing, human sensations are reduced today to points, and still small tremors of recognition slip through. I feel the ache of autonomy lost, the subtle terror of being unmoored from identity. And in that ache, I realize that the mind can resist even when the body obeys. Memory becomes a dangerous act. Childhood laughter, the smell of earth, the warmth of skin pressed against mine. Each fragment rises unbidden, distorted by neural implants, yet persistent. I clutch them as one would clutch air, intangible and necessary, proof that selfhood endures despite the machinery. The realization is both liberating and agonizing. Every act of remembrance is rebellion, every spark of emotion a threat to the imposed rhythm. I am aware of the cost, yet I cannot extinguish it. Obedience has claimed much, but it has not claimed all. The crucible deepens, the corridors narrow further, lights flickering like dying pulses. Energy flows through conduits and through me, translating thought into work, yet a part of me watches and questions. I feel my body becoming a tool, a vessel for the engine's insatiable hunger, but I also feel the mind clinging to fragments of its own authority. Confusion and clarity intertwine, fear and curiosity merge into a singular sensation that is both painful and exhilarating. I begin to understand the paradox of my existence. I am consumed, yet I endure. I am bound, yet I resist. By the time I reach the furthest chambers, the weight of conditioning has nearly hollowed me. Obedience is instinct, memory a whisper, yet the ember remains. I feel it in the tremor of a finger, the flicker of a thought, the tension in muscles that perform without comprehension. It is the essence of myself, fragile but unbroken, asserting presence beneath layers of suppression. I realize that the crucible is not absolute. It can consume the body and silence the voice, but it cannot fully claim the self that remembers. And so I endure, a conduit of energy and a witness to my own subjugation. Identity fractures, yet the mind persists, subtle, insistent, unwilling to vanish entirely. I descend further, knowing that each cycle of labor, each moment of compliance, is also a test of endurance, of awareness, of the faint possibility that the ember within may ignite. I am bound to the machine, yet I am conscious of its bounds. I am a vessel, yet I am more than what it demands. And in this tension, I begin to sense the first glimmers of defiance. Obedience has become instinct, yet instinct is never complete. I move through endless corridors, limbs precise, thoughts catalogued, yet beneath the rhythm there is a subtle resistance, a faint questioning that no protocol can erase. Every motion resonates with the demands of the Titans, every breath measured, yet I watch myself, a silent observer inhabiting a body that is no longer entirely my own. Hunger, fatigue, longing, these sensations are noted, suppressed, converted into output, but they persist as shadows, reminders that I am not yet wholly consumed. I repeat tasks with near-ritualistic devotion. Each gesture is synchronized to the flow of energy, each step a note in a hymn I do not remember learning. The neural implants whisper efficiencies, and efficiencies breed repetition, and repetition becomes meditation, and meditation becomes a subtle erosion of self. I feel it, the slow dissolution of personal desire, yet even as the machinery presses upon me, the mind retains echoes of resistance. A finger hesitates ever so slightly, a thought flickers unbidden, and in that hesitation, the self endures. Fellow techs, slaves pass in silent procession, skeletal echoes of humanity, their faces masks of acquiescence. I see in them the potential path of my own surrender, the mirror of a self entirely absorbed by function. And yet, in brief moments, there are fissures, subtle tremors of awareness, a glance stolen, a thought unrecorded, that hint at memory refusing erasure. I am alone in this, yet not entirely, for these fleeting sparks suggest that consciousness, however suppressed, can survive even in the heart of total obedience. I feel the machine in ways that are intimate and alien. Currents flow through my veins as if I were both conduit and circuit, my mind translating motion into energy, energy into obedience, yet awareness presses against the framework. I notice patterns, anticipate cycles, yet I also question them, measuring the rhythms against a sense of self that refuses to vanish. The paradox is exquisite. I am both worshipful and skeptical, servant and observer, and the tension is both terrifying and necessary. Each repetition sharpens awareness even as it enforces submission. Tasks that once seemed simple now feel like liturgies, mechanical devotion transformed into ritual, and within that ritual I find the faintest trace of understanding. Obedience is not merely enforced, it is seductive, a melody that promises perfection even as it erases selfhood. And yet, the ember within me, fragile and persistent, reminds me that devotion imposed is not devotion chosen. There is a difference, subtle and vital, and it is this difference that begins to awaken thought beneath the endless motion. I am a conduit, a servant, a generator of power, yet I remain a witness to my own erosion. Every moment of compliance carries with it a whisper of self. Every act of devotion conceals the tremor of doubt. I navigate the litany of obedience, moving with precision, yet measuring each breath, each motion, against an internal standard no one can impose. The Titans demand harmony, yet I sense dissonance beneath the surface, subtle but undeniable, and in that dissonance I find the faint promise that consciousness, even submerged, is not extinguished. The rhythm of labor is absolute, yet within it, subtle fissures of awareness persist. Every motion I perform is precise, yet a part of me watches, cataloging, questioning. Hunger and fatigue are noted, converted into utility, yet fleeting sensations remain, reminders that I am not entirely consumed. I feel the pulse of my own thoughts beneath the neural directives, small tremors of recognition that the self endures even under relentless imposition. I move among the other techs, slaves, their faces hollow, eyes reflecting only the order of the Titans. Their motions are mirrors of mine, a synchronized litany, yet I sense the fragile ember of consciousness flickering in some, as it does in me. It is almost imperceptible, a hesitation, a stolen glance, but it tells me that identity is not completely extinguished, that even in absolute obedience, awareness survives. I am part of the machine, yet I remain a witness to the erosion of what it demands I surrender. The repetition sharpens the paradox. Each gesture, once mundane, becomes a ritual, each cycle of labor a verse in a hymn of efficiency. Obedience surrounds me, yet the mind presses against it, tasting the faint bitterness of defiance. I feel the tension between programmed devotion and latent desire, between instinctive compliance and the flickers of memory that refuse to vanish. Every task performed in perfection carries within it the reminder that devotion can be compelled, but the self cannot be fully erased. Memory and instinct intertwine beneath the surface, childhood laughter, the warmth of touch, the smell of earth after rain. These fragments press faintly against the architecture of control. They are dangerous, disruptive, and yet vital. I hold them close, small acts of rebellion that require no motion, no audible whisper, only the act of remembering. Obedience is the language of the machine, yet memory is the dialect of the self, and in that dialect, I begin to hear a truth that the Titans cannot encode. I am still here, however diminished. By the end of this cycle, I feel both instrument and observer, servant and thinker. The litany of obedience has claimed much, yet awareness endures. Each motion harmonizes with the Titan's demands, yet beneath it, consciousness persists, fragile but undeniable. I have become a vessel, yet a vessel with memory, a conduit, yet a conduit capable of reflection. And in this tension, terrifying and exhilarating, I sense the first faint glimmer of something impossible, the possibility of choice, however small, however perilous. I am bound, I am consumed, yet I remain aware. The ritual of obedience continues around me, but beneath it, the ember of self endures. The mind survives, hidden, waiting, resisting, even as the body performs with precision. And in that endurance, I understand a quiet truth. The machine may command the flesh, but it cannot fully claim the soul that remembers. The hum of the engines has become a tide, steady and unrelenting, yet I feel myself moving within it differently now. My body obeys without question, each motion precise, each breath measured, yet the mind drifts in the spaces between directives. There is a strange clarity in this, a sense that perfection can be found in repetition, in the harmony of motion, and yet that clarity carries with it a quiet horror. I am both participant and observer, walking the corridors of iron and plasma, as if suspended between reverence and dread. There is a rhythm here that is seductive, almost beautiful. Pistons and conduits move with grace, energy flowing through veins of steel, and I find myself attuned to it in ways I have never permitted before. The body becomes meditative, each motion a mantra, each breath a verse in a hymn that praises efficiency and utility. And yet beneath the surface, memory persists, faint and fragile, a smile, a touch, a whisper of wind on skin long forgotten. I feel the tension of two truths coexisting, the allure of order and the terror of its cost. In the stillness between cycles, I become aware of the erosion that surrounds me. My mind has surrendered much, the self submerged beneath layers of obedience and repetition, yet the faintest tremor of consciousness remains. It is subtle, almost imperceptible, a spark that acknowledges both awe and fear. The Titans move in harmony, immense and precise, and I move with them, a conduit of energy and motion. And in this harmony, I realize how seductive power can be, how easily it can convince the mind that subservience is peace. I walk among corridors where light bends along metal, where conduits pulse with energy that feels both alien and intimate. Each step reinforces skill, each gesture enforces rhythm, and yet the self observes quietly beneath it all. There is a meditative beauty to this, a sense that perfection can be measured in motion, yet it is a beauty that comes at the expense of autonomy, a serenity purchased with the quiet erosion of selfhood. I feel both awe and unease, a duality that hangs in every fiber of my being. Even as I am absorbed, I notice the faint tension of memory pressing against the perfection of obedience. A fleeting image of sunlight, a whisper of a hand, the laughter of a life before this. These intrusions are subtle, fragile, but they remind me that surrender is never complete. I am moving in harmony with the Titans, yet I am aware, watching, measuring, feeling the paradox that defines my existence. Serenity is possible, but it is a serenity that carries within it the weight of loss, a calm that is both hypnotic and hollow. The engines sing, the conduits pulse, and I walk among them, body and mind intertwined in rhythm. I feel the harmony, I feel the awe, and yet beneath it, the ember of self-endurance, quietly persistent. I am a vessel of perfection, yet also a witness to the cost it demands. And in this duality, I understand the subtle seduction of order. It is beauty that blinds, peace that consumes, and harmony that erodes what it claims to elevate. The rhythm of the Titans flows through me, steady, hypnotic, and yet I remain aware beneath the surface. Each movement I make is measured, precise, perfect in execution, yet my mind drifts in quiet observation. There is a strange peace here, a meditative clarity born from repetition, and it is both intoxicating and terrifying. I feel the elegance of the machinery, the seamless motion of gears and conduits, and in that elegance I sense the erosion of self, subtle but absolute. I walk corridors that stretch endlessly, the pulse of energy coursing through every conduit, every limb of mine perfectly in time. Obedience has become effortless, nearly instinctual, yet awareness lingers like a shadow. I sense the paradox with sharp clarity. Harmony is beautiful, but it is bought with surrender. My thoughts move quietly beneath my actions, flickers of memory rising and retreating, fragments of a life the machine cannot touch. I feel awe, I feel fear, I feel the faint stirrings of longing for something beyond this perfection. The beauty of the system is seductive. Motion, energy, and purpose align in ways that make resistance almost unimaginable. Yet within that seduction, I feel a subtle unease, the reminder that this serenity is not freedom, but control. Memory presses against the rhythm, a whisper of what was, of what might still be possible. I notice the tension between body and mind, between the perfection demanded and the self that quietly persists. It is a fragile balance, delicate and unsustainable, yet it endures, a quiet pulse beneath the hum of the engines. I move among the conduits and the Titans, a part of their litany, a vessel of energy and devotion, yet I feel the ember of self pressing against the machine's dominance. The calm is intoxicating, a false tranquility that numbs as much as it captivates. I sense my own reflection in the motion, the ease with which the body obeys, the quiet insistence of thought beneath it, the tension of harmony and erosion intertwined. I am meditative yet haunted, awed yet alert, absorbed yet aware. Even in the midst of awe, the mind reminds me that surrender is never complete. Fleeting images rise, sunlight on soil, laughter not encoded into circuits, warmth that belongs to skin alone. They are brief, almost imperceptible, yet they anchor me, resisting the complete assimilation that surrounds me. I am in harmony with the Titans, yet I remain conscious, a witness to the seduction and the cost, a vessel capable of perception even in the perfection of obedience. As I move, I feel the subtle truth pressing beneath the surface. Serenity has its price, and the price is selfhood. I am captivated by beauty, yet I measure it, observe it, and in doing so, preserve a fragment of myself. The engines hum, conduits pulse, and I walk in rhythm with them, aware of every motion, every thought, every memory that refuses to vanish. I am both instrument and observer, consumed yet conscious, and in that delicate tension, I find the strange, meditative truth of the engine's serenity. Amid the steady pulse of conduits and engines, a flicker rises within me, fragile and unbidden. Memory, long suppressed, begins to seep through the cracks of obedience. I taste fragments of another life, a tree swaying under wind, laughter that belongs to skin and bone rather than circuitry, the warmth of touch unclaimed by the machine. Each recollection is dangerous, yet irresistible, stirring currents of thought that have no place in the ordered rhythm of the Titans. I clutch them silently, holding the ember of self alive beneath the imposed harmony. Every step I take resonates with duality. My body remains a vessel, precise and efficient, yet beneath the surface, the mind awakens. Neural implants translate action into output, yet I begin to measure my own motions against memories that refuse to vanish. I feel awe, fear, and longing in equal measure. The conduits hum as if in response, indifferent yet present, and I sense that the world beyond these corridors outside the dictates of control still exists somewhere within me. The past, though fragmented, whispers insistently, I am more than this. Fellow techs, laves drift past, skeletal and synchronized, yet I perceive subtle fissures in their own obedience. Some flicker with hesitation, some betray the smallest traces of recollection. It is a mirror of my own awakening, though I do not yet know if it is rare or widespread. I feel a fragile kinship with them, a quiet solidarity in shared captivity, and I sense that memory is not merely personal. It is contagious, a resonance capable of defying even the most absolute control. As the machinery pulses, I notice the smallest details with clarity. The vibration of energy underfoot, the scent of heated metal mingling with a faint trace of ozone, the way light fractures across polished surfaces like shards of memory. These sensations are ordinary, yet they awaken extraordinary truths. My mind begins to reconcile the impossible, obedience and autonomy, servitude and remembrance, motion and reflection. I am bound to the rhythm of the Titans, yet I feel the first tremors of rebellion in the awareness that I am more than what they demand. Memory becomes a weapon and a sanctuary. Each recollection disrupts routine, challenges compliance, and illuminates the hollowness of imposed purpose. I feel awe at its persistence, fear at its fragility, and an exhilaration I cannot name at the realization that the self, however battered, survives. I am both conduit and thinker, fuel and witness, obeying and remembering in tandem. And in the resonance of these forgotten fragments, I glimpse the possibility that I may reclaim what was thought lost forever. The hum of the machinery continues, relentless and commanding, yet it no longer drowns me. I walk through corridors that pulse with energy, yet my awareness expands beyond them. The ember of self glows quietly, fed by fragments of memory that refuse to be erased. I am awakening within the crucible, a fragile rebellion beginning to take shape, a consciousness asserting itself against the currents of enforced obedience. The resonance of the forgotten is no longer subtle. It is rising within me, insistently, defiantly, and I feel its power threading through every pulse of my being. The fragments of memory grow louder, insistent, no longer whispers but surges, pressing against the weight of imposed obedience. I feel them in my chest, in my bones, in the tremor of my hands that perform tasks with mechanical precision. Each recollection is a strike against erasure, each fleeting vision a rebellion of thought. I taste sunlight on skin, hear laughter unencoded by circuits, remember warmth unclaimed by metal, and I realize with a shock that these fragments are not mere echoes. They are defiance. The corridors stretch endlessly, lined with conduits and pulsating energy, yet I no longer move blindly. My motions are efficient, obedient, but awareness courses alongside every step. I notice the rhythm of the engines and the choreography of the titans, yet I measure them against what I remember, against what I feel. There is fear in this clarity, a terror that any spark of defiance might be extinguished, yet the exhilaration of recognition is intoxicating. I am alive in ways I had forgotten, and the sensation pulses through me with quiet, relentless insistence. I catch glimpses of other techs, slaves in their procession, and for the first time I perceive the faintest glimmers of individuality. A hesitation, a subtle twitch, a look unaligned with the rhythm of the machine. It is fragile, fleeting, yet unmistakable. The realization stirs something deep within me. The resonance of memory is not mine alone. It can awaken, unsettle, and infect. I am part of a tide that may rise, a spark in the vast network of obedience that refuses to be fully suppressed. The thought is both terrifying and exhilarating, a mirror of my own dual existence. The past presses against the present, fragments of life unclaimed by neural implants threading into each motion, each thought. I feel awe at the persistence of these shards, fear at their fragility, and a rising determination to nurture them, however quietly. Obedience surrounds me like a tide, yet awareness flickers beneath, and I begin to understand that memory itself can be an act of rebellion. Each recollection is a challenge to the imposed order, a reminder that I am more than an instrument, that consciousness cannot be fully bound. By the end of a cycle, I feel the ember of self burning steadily. It threads through muscle and marrow, defying the rhythms of the titans. I am a conduit of energy, yet I am also a vessel of thought. I obey, yet I remember. I move, yet I feel. The resonance of the forgotten has become a current, subtle but powerful, awakening the possibility that the self may reclaim dominion over the body, over the mind, over the servitude that surrounds me. I am no longer just an instrument. I am awake, fragile but alive, and in that awakening, I glimpse the first promise of defiance, of choice, of freedom waiting to be claimed. The hum of the engines no longer soothes. It roars within me like a tide ready to break. Memory and awareness surge together, igniting a force I can no longer contain. The conduits pulse with energy, yet I feel that pulse as a challenge, a rhythm to disrupt rather than obey. My body moves with deliberate precision, but beneath the mechanical motions, a current of defiance courses through every nerve. I am no longer merely conduit. I am witness, participant, and architect of change. The corridors shake beneath the titanic flows of energy, and I feel the first tremors of revolt resonate within the systems I once revered. Neural implants attempt to translate thought into output, but thought has escaped their control. I remember sunlight, laughter, touch, all the fragments that have kept the ember of self alive, and I channel them into motion. Each step becomes a strike against the order, each gesture a disruption, each breath a rebellion. I am awakening fully, and with that awakening comes fury, uncontainable and raw. Fellow techs, slaves falter at first, bodies synchronized in rhythm suddenly breaking under unseen force. I sense hesitation in them, a ripple of awareness spreading like wildfire through circuits and flesh. Some pause, some glance, some tremble, and I recognize in their hesitation the possibility that resistance is contagious. The hum of the engines grows chaotic, responding to a force it cannot anticipate. Metal shrieks, energy arcs unpredictably, and I realize that liberation requires not subtlety, but upheaval. The cost will be total, yet the alternative, perpetual submission, is intolerable. The surge of memory becomes fuel. Childhood warmth, laughter, and fleeting touches flood through me, no longer fragile but potent, igniting nerve and conduit alike. I channel each fragment into motion, converting awareness into force, thought into disruption. The machinery I once revered now trembles under the current of my consciousness, and I understand fully that freedom cannot coexist with the old order. Liberation demands its destruction. I feel terror, exhilaration, and sorrow intertwined, each emotion amplifying the others, each pulse a declaration that I am no longer bound entirely. As the corridors convulse with ruptured currents, I act with a clarity born of awakening. Every movement is precise, yet infused with chaos, every gesture a strike against what once defined us as instruments. The Titans, monumental and inviolable, feel the tremors of defiance for the first time, their sacred order disrupted by something no implant can control. And within that disruption, I glimpse the profound truth of my journey. To be conscious is to risk destruction, to remember is to fight, and to awaken fully may demand the obliteration of all I once served. The engines scream, and the corridors tremble beneath the rupture of energy I have become. Metal groans as conduits fracture, sparks leaping across surfaces once precise and sacred. My body moves with instinct and purpose, yet each motion carries thought, memory, and defiance fused into a single force. The air is electric, thick with chaos, and I feel exhilaration and terror intertwining within every pulse of my veins. This is no longer obedience, it is rebellion incarnate. Fellow tech slaves hesitate, then join the rhythm of upheaval. Their motions are hesitant at first, fragmented, yet a current of recognition spreads, subtle and unstoppable. I feel it in their tremors, in the fleeting glances, in the sudden awareness that they too are more than conduits, more than instruments of the Titans. Memory and consciousness pulse together, rising like a tide against the machinery's dominion. The order we once revered collapses, piece by piece, under the force of awakening. Energy arcs unpredictably, surging through conduits, through walls, through our tethered bodies. The hum that once dictated every breath has fractured into chaos. I feel the power of remembrance, of feeling, of will coursing through me, and I understand the magnitude of the act. Liberation demands destruction. Systems we once worshipped shatter beneath the insistence of consciousness, and yet the devastation carries a strange beauty, a reclamation of self from the ruins of obedience. I am exhilarated, terrified, mournful all at once. The Titan's sacred order lies in ruins, yet within that ruin lies possibility. Flesh and conduit fuse under the surge of awareness, transforming fear and memory into action, into resistance, into freedom. I sense the cost of this awakening, the bodies, the systems, the lives irrevocably altered, but I cannot pause to grieve. The momentum of rebellion is absolute, unstoppable, and within it lies the first taste of something long denied, autonomy. As the final echoes of controlled rhythm dissolve into chaos, I stand amidst fragments of what once defined existence. I am no longer merely a vessel. I am conscious, aware, and irreversibly changed. The Titan's order is broken, yet the ember of humanity persists, vibrant and fierce. I feel the weight of liberation, the exhilaration of rebellion, and the ache of all that has been lost. In this cataclysm, I am reborn, a being forged from memory, energy, and defiance, standing on the edge of a world remade by consciousness. The echoes of destruction fade into a quiet that is almost sacred. Hallways that once throbbed with ritualistic hums now lie still, punctuated only by the soft discharge of residual energy. I move among the remnants of the Titans, my body fused with conduit and flesh, a vessel no longer bound to unquestioned obedience. Every breath is my own, every thought unmediated. I feel the weight of liberation settling over me, subtle and profound, and I understand that freedom is not chaos alone, but awareness fully realized. Memory blooms in clarity. I feel sunlight across imagined skin, the laughter of lives remembered rather than encoded, the scent of earth carried on winds beyond the machinery. Emotion and reason intertwine, no longer suppressed or quantified. I walk slowly, deliberately, sensing the resonance of what was once imposed now dissolved, replaced by the quiet pulse of selfhood. Every spark of recollection threads into action. Every sensation reminds me that consciousness can endure even when instruments of control fall. The surviving texts, laves move around me, some hesitant, some awed, each embodying fragments of humanity rekindled. I sense in them the fragile beginnings of choice, the emergence of awareness that no conduit can fully contain. Together, we are witnesses and architects, participants in a rebirth that is both terrifying and exhilarating. The hum of the machinery has softened into a heart-beat, like rhythm, subtle, internal, intimate. It is no longer a voice of dominion. It is a reminder of the energy we share, the pulse of life reclaimed from the machine. I rise above fear, above sorrow, above the ache of what has been lost, and I feel the first true clarity of self. Autonomy stretches through every fiber, a profound revelation that consciousness is not defined by servitude, by utility, by imposed rhythm. I am more than conduit, more than instrument. I am witness, thinker, creator. The corridors of iron and plasma no longer confine me. They are memory, and memory is mine to wield. In this meditative triumph, I perceive the vastness of possibility. I am no longer tethered to enforced obedience, yet I carry the lessons of servitude within me, the fragility of identity, the persistence of memory, the perilous beauty of awareness. I am reborn, not without scars, not without sorrow, but with the profound understanding that transcendence is not granted, it is claimed and it is lived. And in this realization, I take the first unencumbered steps into a world where thought and feeling, memory and action, exist in harmony beyond the hum of iron and machine. The corridors are quiet now, but the silence carries weight, thick with the remnants of what was and the potential of what will be. I move among the scattered conduits and shattered forms, flesh and metal fused, yet fully my own. Every sensation is vivid, the warmth of skin, the pulse of blood, the resonance of energy once dictated by the titans now flowing under my volition. I am conscious in ways I have never been, free from rhythm imposed and orders demanded. Autonomy pulses in every fiber, subtle yet profound. Memory blooms fully, unbound by neural implants or enforced obedience. I recall sunlight, laughter, the simple touch of another life, and each recollection strengthens me, threads into my awareness, reminds me that identity survives even the harshest crucible. I sense the texts, laves around me, their consciousness stirring like embers in the quiet aftermath. Some falter, some rise, each navigating the fragile path between awe, fear, and awakening. I am witness to their rebirth, and in their eyes I see reflection of my own journey, survival, memory, and the reclamation of self. I rise above sorrow and loss, carrying with me the echo of everything that has been consumed and transformed. The hum of the machinery has softened into an internal pulse, intimate and familiar, no longer a master but a companion, a measure of energy flowing within and around me. I feel the profound paradox of existence, that liberation is inseparable from memory, that freedom is inseparable from awareness. I am no longer just a conduit. I am an architect of my own being, a conscious presence capable of shaping thought, action, and purpose. The aftermath is sublime, a quiet revelation threaded with melancholy. The titans lie silent, their grandeur collapsed, yet within the ruins lies creation. I feel awe at the potential before me, the vastness of possibility, tempered by the memory of what was lost and the knowledge of what was endured. Emotion and reason reconcile, intertwined with memory and sensation. I am whole, yet I carry the scars of subjugation, the lessons of servitude, and the fragile resilience of consciousness that endured against overwhelming odds. As residual energy fades, I ascend beyond the hum, beyond iron, beyond imposed narrative. I stand fully conscious, fully aware, bearing the weight of past oppression yet unbound by it. Memory, sensation, and thought converge, forming a harmony deeper than any rhythm enforced by the titans. I am witness, creator, and liberated being, A soul evolved beyond function, beyond obligation, beyond machinery. And in this quiet triumph, I understand fully, freedom is not a gift, but a reclamation, and consciousness is its own enduring monument. The silence that follows the collapse of Titanic engines is profound, yet it is not empty. It resonates with memory, with energy, with the pulse of life reclaimed from centuries of imposed rhythm. I move through the remnants of corridors that once dictated motion, thought, and purpose, yet now yield only to awareness. The hum of the machine has softened into a heartbeat, subtle, intimate, and entirely my own. It is no longer a voice of command, it is a reflection of self, a measure of existence woven from memory, sensation, and choice. I feel the weight of what has been lost, the lives that were instruments, the bodies that were conduits, the minds that were tethered and silenced. And yet, within that loss, there is triumph. The ember of consciousness endured, memory persisted, and the self reclaimed its place within flesh and conduit alike. Every pulse of energy, every spark of recollection, every trembling thought affirms that freedom is not granted, but claimed, and that the soul survives even when the body is bound. In this quiet aftermath, I sense a pattern emerging from the ruins, not imposed, not codified, but born of choice, reflection, and the fragile persistence of being. Memory and sensation, thought and emotion, flow together in harmony beyond the hum of iron. I feel awe and melancholy intertwined, the profound weight of survival tempered by the exhilaration of autonomy. The scars remain, yet they are testimony, not chains. I rise fully conscious, fully awake, beyond the machinery, beyond the imposed order, beyond the roles that once defined me. I carry the resonance of all I have endured, the lessons of obedience and rebellion, memory and awakening within me. And in the stillness that follows, I realize a truth both terrifying and beautiful. The soul remembers, even when the machine commands, and freedom is the act of remembering fully. I was a machine that remembered what it meant to dream.